everybody. Welcome to the Something New Show. I'm Mindi Linscombe, your host, and we like to talk about how to live a life worth celebrating. And today I have a very special guest, flew in from Scottsdale to give you some amazing downloads on how to live your best life. I can't wait to introduce you to her. Her name is Andreea, and I want you to say your Romanian pronunciation of your last name.
Muresan.
Muresan. Okay, great. And then I'd love to tell our listeners a little bit more about you. So here's a quick bio on Andreea. She is a passionate business professional who loves all things money, spreadsheets, and numbers. And I got to meet your mom the other night, and she said since you were a little girl, your math teacher said you were a genius. Yes. And that's pretty amazing. She is an active real estate investor, primarily focusing on luxury short-term rental properties. Andreea loves to empower other women to understand finances, and she just announced her first community for accredited women, teaching them how to invest and multiply their money. Her purpose is to love God and to love people as she seeks to help, inspire, and motivate others to live their best lives, which is why we have the Something New show. So isn't that perfect?
Yeah.
You're just like a perfect guest for us.
Thank you.
Thank you for flying in and being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great. So it's been a special week. For those of you that maybe follow us on Instagram, you maybe saw that you just celebrated your 15th wedding anniversary, and we got to help be a small little part of that at Something New. And we know each other not through that experience of your anniversary, but more through a mastermind that we're a part of as business owners and entrepreneurs. So it's been so great to get to know you and see all that you're doing with your business. But I think that our listeners really have to go back today with us and see and hear what an amazing story your family has of coming to America, because it's an unusual one. It's very uncommon. I can't wait for you to share the stats on how unlikely it was for you to get a visa to move here as a little girl. So I'd love for you to start us there. You were born in Romania.
Yeah, we're going to go way back in time.
Yeah, let's go back to Romania. Okay.
So born in Romania when it was still under communist rule, and eventually we went through the revolution. My husband actually escaped on foot. His family escaped on foot before the revolution, but my family stayed back. And in 1997, my dad applied for the visa lottery. I don't know if your listeners know what that is, but basically you come to the U.S. and you get a green card right away. And there's something like 7 to 11 million people every single year who apply for the visa. And there's about 50,000 visas that are issued globally. And in Romania specifically, only about 500 visas are issued. So when you think about that, the stats behind that, out of, call it even on the low end, 7 million people, and I'm one of those. Out of the 500, my family was chosen to come here. So, and of course, there were some challenges around just the criteria, and we had to go to the embassy and had to get approved and everything like that. But ultimately, it's by the grace of God that we were able to move to the U.S. And when you think about it, people, when they say that they come to the U.S., it's like winning the lottery. For me, I truly won the lottery. It's not just I came to the U.S. So for me, that gives me a huge sense of responsibility. It gives me a huge sense of stewardship over what I've been given, over the opportunities I've been given. So it's interesting for people who are maybe born here. They don't know that, the hardship to come to the great country that we live in, and perhaps they take it for granted, right? So
absolutely. Well, give them some of the reasons why where you came from wasn't great to live, because I think that's what they don't have a perspective of.
Yeah. So when I was born, you couldn't have freedom of religion. If you didn't belong to the Communist Party, you couldn't rise up. You couldn't be, like a director or a supervisor, or just have more higher status jobs. There were lines for bread, for milk, for basically all the groceries.
I heard your mom say it was gone by 8 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was very different back then, and they would all the television had propaganda. They would say that in America people sleep under the bridge and they go hungry, and they wouldn't allow us to see, even a Thanksgiving spread, which obviously things are very different here. They would say, oh, we can't let them see how much food is in America. So they would have all of that blocked. We had one channel that we would watch, and it would just show basically Romanian television or whatever was allowed by the Communist Party.
And do you feel like people in Romania really believed that that's the truth, or did they question it?
I think a lot of people question it. I mean, I was also very young, so my recollection is just what I hear from my parents. But I mean, there's a reason they ultimately killed Ceausescu, the president, on live television. They had the shortest trial on December 25th, and they actually shot him behind the building, him and his wife, on live TV. So I think because of that, I think people kind of realized, but obviously it took a while to actually get to the point where they were able to overthrow that government.
Wow. And so your family wins the official visa lottery to come to a free country. And to them, they're not really sure of what to expect because they haven't seen pictures or whatever. They just know it's going to be better than where they live now. And you guys come over and you're 11 years old, no English. And your parents put you in school. And I assume at those times there were not ESL programs. I was an ESL teacher, actually. I don't know if we were. Yeah, I was an ESL teacher in there. I don't think that many programs like that existed back in, what would that have been, the 80s or 90s?
99. Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? What kind of support did you have at the school?
So thankfully, I picked up English very quickly, and my brother and my sister kind of picked up English, actually in Romania, because after the communist over the revolution, we did have some channels that were in English. So they would pick that up, but I knew numbers, I knew colors, and just very, very basic words. And then I just being in school and trying to put together sentences, and I would always.
But you didn't have a teacher translating for you?
No, just my family, my cousin, and just however I could learn, I guess, translate. We actually had, do you remember back in the day before technology, there would be actual books that would translate from like Spanish to English or whatever. So I had one of those, Romanian to English. And it was tough. My first year in school, it was 6th grade. It was very tough. I didn't have any friends. It was very difficult to make friends when you don't speak English. I was bullied because of my English, or, you know, sometimes I would say something and it didn't make sense. I remember eating lunch with the teacher because I didn't have any friends. So it was very challenging at first, but I think it actually made me tougher, and it helped me just realize that it doesn't matter what other people think about me, because they can judge me based on how well or how badly my English is. But ultimately, I just kind of grew in my own confidence.
Well, I also just see you as so gritty in a way that most 6th graders are trying to learn algebra or whatever, but here you are learning a language and learning algebra. So you're working twice as hard as anyone else from the beginning. And essentially, it sounds like that continued throughout your life. Like you went to college and you did a 4-year degree in 2 years.
I did.
So again, working twice as hard as standard American people. But I look at how you were raised, and I just think there was so much gratitude in your family and the time that we've shared with them, just to see that, hey, we are so fortunate and blessed to have the opportunities that we have. And there's really no reason why someone can't be successful in the world we have in America. So I don't know if you have any, I know Ben wrote a book about that too, didn't he? What is it called?
From Communism to Capitalism. Yeah.
And tell me, what is that about, just briefly?
So it's his story, how his parents escaped, leaving communism, and then the money lessons that he learned being in business, an entrepreneur for over, I think at the time he was over 13 years in business. So yeah, he basically told his story, and such a great book. Like I read it, and there's just so much wisdom about money and beliefs about money, right? So many people have limiting beliefs about money, and I feel like he really unlocked some of those for me just reading them. And I'm married to the guy, right?
Yeah, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I know. I can't wait to read it too. When I heard about the book the other day, I was like, wow. And I was so thankful to get to hear your parents' story from their own mouths, which was pretty incredible to hear them working in a trade that was just a means to get by. It wasn't their passion. And what I think is so beautiful is like you and I are living in the generation where we get to choose our passion. I mean, I'm sitting in a beautiful bridal store. I'm so lucky to do this. But when I hear our parents' stories, it's like you do what you do to pay for your family to live. So it's like amazing that your mom didn't necessarily get to say, what do I dream of doing one day? But she said, I'm going to do this not fun job for 30 plus years so that my daughter can dream.
Yeah.
And I mean, I see you already encouraging her to dream in this season of her life, which is beautiful too. But
I'm so grateful to my parents. Like, honestly, they did whatever it took, right? They left their comfortable lives. They didn't speak any English. And even now, I mean, you saw there's still broken English, but good. They understand it. But just the fact that they left everything behind, family. My mom had a job. My dad was laid off at the time. But just they were 45. Like, that's half your life. You leave all of that behind just to give your kids a better life. So I will never be able to thank them enough for that.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. Okay, so then you decide, I'm going to go to college. You're great in school, maybe not with a ton of friends, but you had great grades. You're a genius mathematician. And then you go to college for what? What did you go to college for?
So finance. I got my bachelor's in finance. A few years later, I actually went back for my master's. master's, so I do have a master's. I just love numbers. I remember even as a little kid when my mom would come home from her job and I would put the bills, you know, they have a serial number. I would just line them up in order. Like, I just love playing with money. I remember I must have been like 7, maybe even younger than that. And I would just like line them up in like the 5s and the 10s. So I love money. My sister went for accounting. I was like, I don't want to do accounting. I like, you know, budgets and numbers. And so I ended up going into finance, got a job right away after I graduated, worked in the auto industry, and just advanced, had a few different progressive roles, was on track to be CFO. And then in 2020, it was a God thing where I just felt so burnt out, and it was just kind of like, hey, you should take a break and see what happens. And it was very hard. It was a very hard decision. I had a long conversation with Ben about it. But ultimately I got the confirmation that I should just take a leave of absence. And then during that leave of absence, I was like, you know what, I'm meant to do more than just, you know, work for a different company. I think I need to go into entrepreneurship myself, because my husband had been doing entrepreneurship and mentorship for a few years at that point. I mean, he was always a business owner since we got 19, married. Yeah. Yeah. And then he started mentoring people around 2019. So at that point I was seeing the impact that he was making. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I feel like, you know, I can lead my team at work and I can do all these things and make money for the company, which is great, but I don't feel like I have the same impact that he's having with people. So I decided to leave my job, took a leap of faith, and it was tough. Like, when you're working for somebody for 12 years and then all of a sudden that steady paycheck is not coming in, I went into major scarcity mindset. Like, remember even going out to a restaurant and my husband would order something. I'm like, why did you get the most expensive thing? Like, couldn't you get something cheap? Like, that was the conversation I was having with myself. And I had to, you know, snap myself out of it when my husband pointed out, he's like, you're kind of, you know, thinking you're budgeting. Like, why are you budgeting? Like, we can go and make money in business and all these other things. So it was a very interesting period of time, but I figured it out.
I can relate. You know, my husband had the same corporate job for 14 years, and then all of a sudden that's a big change. Yeah. When now it's more, it's up to you. It's like 100,000% up to you what comes home every month.
It's a bit of an identity shift.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about your launch. You started getting into real estate investing, primarily luxury properties for Airbnb.
Yeah.
So first of all, I know Ben was a real estate agent, so you're familiar with real estate.
Yeah.
But what made you go, hey, I think this part of the market sounds interesting?
So I've always loved real estate. And when my husband started investing in real estate right after we got married, I was like, sweet, I like this. It's a good business. So I encouraged him, and he ended up doing hundreds of flips and wholesales, and he was doing everything in the single family space. And I had always been kind of behind the scenes, but I never went to look at properties. And he wasn't buying luxury. He was buying whatever was selling, right? Whatever he could make a profit on. So after leaving my job, had a bit of an identity crisis with my scarcity mindset. And then I was like, okay, I got to go back to what I love doing. And that's running numbers, analyzing properties. I like doing all that kind of stuff. Not necessarily the operational piece, but at least like the underwriting and just looking at deals and getting good deals. So I partnered up with 2 agents and in Las Vegas, and it turned out it was a great relationship. They had the operational expertise. They had the marketing. I was the finance. I have not a legal background. I used to work with legal, and I like that kind of thing. So I was like, hey, I kind of like, you know, our skills are complementary. Why don't we join forces? And we bought 4 properties. We ended up selling one of them, actually. So now we have 3 properties in Las Vegas, and I'm on the lookout for more in Scottsdale, which is where we live. And eventually I'd like to own a property in all the major cities that I like to vacation to.
Yeah, you can rent them from yourself.
That's right. That's right.
I love it. And that's a great idea. So when you think about our listeners in different maybe levels of investing, where they might be today, which I love that you have a passion for women, and we'll get to that in a little while about some exciting news you have today for our listeners. But let's take a step for somebody that maybe is just working currently in a 9-to-5, just putting a little bit in a savings account every month. What would be a good kind of first step for those people? And then could you fast forward to someone that's maybe an entrepreneur or even a professional that has a savings account and says, I don't even know where to start with my investing. So let's hit both of those people.
So we're going to step back a little bit in time, when we got married.
Okay.
My husband and I, we bought a duplex. So we had tenants living above us. We were on the main floor, and they had 3 little kids who would like do this
And
very
you
loudly.
need that sound effect.
Yeah,
Yep,
I was like, I'm going to do that sound effect. And it was a sacrifice at the time, but we had a very low living expense because our tenants were paying most of our mortgage, right? So from day one, my husband and I got together and I said, okay, I've got the finance background. I love numbers. I love spreadsheets. I nerd out in Excel. That's just me. And I said, I will figure out what we're spending every month, what we're bringing in every month, and that's going to help us accelerate our growth. So and we had a philosophy: we live on and we save one. So we spend one for living expenses, and then we save one for our investments. And so I tracked everything, literally every single penny that we were spending, every single penny that was coming in.
And you were telling me earlier, there's a website for people to, if they want to analyze where their money's going, where would you send them?
So there's a website called mint.com, mint.com. There's multiple tools. That's just the one that I use.
Came to mind. Yeah. And that'll break down all your expenses.
I used to do it the hard way. I used to log into my bank account. And if I had 5 credit cards or 2 different bank accounts, I would have to log in and pull all the information separately, and download them into Excel and then manually categorize them. Well, this tool just connects all of that into one platform, and then they automatically track. So if you go to McDonald's or Starbucks, it'll say, okay, this is fast food or coffee shop. So it automatically tags those transactions for you. But I was doing all of that manually in Excel. So what I would say for somebody who's just starting out, number one, you have to know your numbers.
Yeah.
If you don't know how much your living expenses, what is your fixed expenses, rent, mortgage, car insurance, all that kind of stuff, you got to know exactly how much you need to live, period. What is your absolute break-even number? And then what tends to happen as you start making more money is your expenses tend to grow. Yep. So I think it's important that as you're making more money, you still know what your expenses are, because it's very easy to be like, okay, I'm making $5,000 a month now and I'm spending, $4,500, whatever. And then you go up a few years later, you're at $7,000. Now your expenses are also $7,000. So you're not really getting ahead because you're still working just to live, right? But when you start tracking, okay, we're now making more money, but we're still spending the same amount. Now I can actually start to put some of the money aside so I can start investing, and then I don't have to work as hard maybe to keep increasing my income, because now I've got money for investing that's going to help me multiply that. So I think it's very important that if you don't know your numbers, how are you supposed to know how to multiply?
And it's kind of like you got to stand on the scale to see where we at with like our health, work on that. It's like you don't know what you don't know. And so I love that advice. I want to go do it because I haven't done it in a while. I'm like, well, I'm going to maybe do that tonight. I'm going to go on there and just like double check like that we're all good. But we do run on a budget as a family, and we run on a budget as a business. Obviously you have to, otherwise you can really make some wrong decisions. Like once a month, we even sit down, Andrea, Jordan and I, and our finance guy, and we look through everything, and it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, I did spend that on that, but at the same time, it's so cool to know like everything I will be held accountable for, and that we're all still tracking towards our long-term goals. So that's good. But anyways, okay. So that's a good step for the baby investor. Somebody's just trying to think about the future. Now let's talk about somebody who maybe has $100,000 in savings and they've been just sitting on it and they're like, what do I do with this?
Yeah. I love that question. So there's so many different investments that you can do real estate, which is one that I love. You can do stock market, bonds, crypto, all these, startups, venture capital. There's so many different things, but what you have to answer for yourself first is, what is your risk tolerance? Because you have to understand that if you're not willing to take a risk, you probably shouldn't invest in crypto, right? Like don't invest in something that's speculative. So I think understanding about yourself, what you're willing to risk. And if you're on the younger side, maybe you're willing to put more money in crypto because it has a chance of blowing up. You've got time to make up. But somebody like my parents, I wouldn't tell them to put their money in crypto because they're already older, right? They don't have time to make it up if they have a huge loss right now. So I think it's important that for yourself, you identify what is your risk tolerance at this stage in your life, which by the way, is going to change as you get older. So just figure out that piece. And then you can do a specific, 20% goes to highest, riskiest assets. Maybe 40% goes to real estate, which is safer. Maybe you want some medium risk and you throw it at the stock market. So I think understanding that, and then you can just let that money grow. But I think the first starting point is just understanding where you're at.
That's really good. And you chose the route of rental properties.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to talk a little bit about rental properties and maybe even talk about that resource you have.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I chose rental properties. My husband and I did flips and wholesaling in Canada when we were living there. We're living in Scottsdale now. And it's great, but it doesn't grow over time. It's active income. You have to work for it. So now I'm invested in long-term real estate, which I'm hoping will just grow over time. In the meantime, it cash flows, and I don't need to have all my income coming from the properties. I want it to grow over time. But because I'm so nerdy and I love Excel spreadsheets, I put together a rental analyzer, which I would love to give to your audience.
Amazing. That would be so awesome.
So it's a tool that I've built for myself and I personally use whenever I look at a property. So it plugs in all the information about the property, the price, the down payment. It even calculates your mortgage depending on what the interest rate is and what term you're getting. You can plug in if it needs renovations. You can plug in some basic data. Obviously, you need to do a little due diligence on your end, but just at a high level, if you just want a starting point to see, okay, is this even a property I need to spend time on, or right off the bat, I'm like, no, this is not a good deal. So it's a great tool that, like I said, I use for myself, and then it'll calculate everything for you. It'll tell you your return on investment. It'll tell you your cash on cash return. You have a few different scenarios. If you just do a long-term rental, if you do a short-term rental, so an Airbnb vacation rental type, and then it'll give you like your base case scenario, and then you can have your home run scenario where, okay, we're just getting a high nightly rate, a lot of occupancy. So all of that in one spreadsheet, and I would love to gift it to your audience.
Oh, I would love that. And I would like to use that personally because we just went in on an Airbnb this year, and I'm very excited about it. But, I kind of do wonder, how many nights this year do I need to rent before we break even, or how long will it take for me to pay off the renovation project and things like that. So I think it'll be so helpful, not just for my listeners, but for me.
Yeah.
So thank you. Tell me, I want to hear about your relationship with Ben, and in the sense, I mean, I know you guys have been married 15 years, and I love watching you together because this is one of the most endearing couples I've ever met, where they look at each other with just so much love and respect, and it's so beautiful. But I just imagine you both work from home all the time. And, when you joined up in 2020 to be a part of the entrepreneur game, so it's like, here we are working together. What have you learned about that, working together?
Oh, we've learned to stay in each other's lanes and not cross over, because it's very easy, especially working together in the same house, sometimes in the same room, or sometimes my office is close to the kitchen. So he'll be in the kitchen. I'll hear, him making food or whatever. And I'm like, I'm trying to work over here. So we've learned to just kind of stay out of our ways. This is today, we call it a money sheet. What's on your money sheet today? What do you absolutely have to get done that's going to bring in revenue or move us forward in our projects? So what's on my money sheet today? I'm going to work on my money sheet. You work on your money sheet. We talk about it, and then come together when we do have questions or issues arise, and just crank through them and make those decisions together. It wasn't always easy, and we're still figuring it out, to be honest, because working together is relatively new. Even when I was in corporate, I knew what he was doing, but I wasn't involved like I am right now. So I think just understanding each other's strengths and not really, I guess, creating conflict around that, right? Like if I know Ben is a great sales guy, I'm not going to go and try to be a salesperson, right? I'm going to focus on my strengths. So I think just operating from your strengths and staying in your lane.
And what about risk tolerance? Do you have different risk tolerances?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So Ben is a lot more, willing to take risks, and
I can see him just being like, let's go.
And we're like, well, let's just look at these numbers. Let's just figure this out. What's the worst case scenario? So it's actually a really good balance, because I feel like sometimes he might want to be like, okay, let's go all out on this. I'm like, but did you think about this? Oh no. But and then I'll kind of pull him in a little bit. But what I'm careful to do now, that maybe I haven't always done, is not pull him in too close, because then we just don't do anything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's important to have some sort of a middle ground, but I don't want us to operate, all from his side or all from my side. I think it's good to be somewhere in the middle. And depending on, the investment, if it's real estate or something else, the numbers will often speak for themselves. So we have a saying, data, not drama. So let's not go off of our emotions. Let's go off of the data. What does the data say? So that's why for me, that rental analyzer, it's like, well, all the numbers are right there. So if the numbers make sense, I mean, yeah, there's going to be things outside of the data that could complicate and, things that maybe we're not considering. But as long as on day one, our due diligence and our data makes sense, then we'll figure out the rest of it.
That's so good. And can I ask you, just thinking through really successful, both you and Ben are so successful. And I can imagine, you maybe being the first generation of seeing this much success, right? And how did that impact kind of the family relationships? And just, I'm sure not everyone in your family, siblings or whatever, have the same walk or outcome if they maybe were an entrepreneur, or maybe they chose a route to be, a salaried employee somewhere that they love. Those things are great too. But how has it impacted, or what are lessons learned perhaps from, as you've grown in success, maintaining those strong relationships with all of the family?
Yeah, that's a good question. You're putting me on the spot. So in my family, we're the only entrepreneurs. Okay. Everybody else is, employed, works for somebody else. In Ben's family, there's a few other guys or siblings.
Which you can be very successful working for someone else too. I want to just say that for the record. Like, being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. And actually there's people I've met that I'm like, don't become an entrepreneur. Yeah. And I've encouraged them, saying you can be so successful in a company that you love, and then taking your savings account and investing it and be just, if not more successful than an entrepreneur. Yeah. But continue.
And actually that's exactly it. So my family, even though none of them are entrepreneurs, they're very successful. My parents, I'm so proud of them, and they've had a few real estate investments and they were able to make money. They also lost some money because that's the world of investing, but ultimately they're ahead. And so to your point, yes, you can be very successful. And my sister as well, and my brother. So on Ben's side, we have a few entrepreneurs, but it's interesting because as we kind of grew in our entrepreneur just experience and just in our business, we started making friends that were entrepreneurs, and maybe some of the conversations have changed. So even I've heard my family say, like, you guys are different. You're not having the same conversations you used to have. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but to me, I think that the quality of the conversations we're having now, or the topics of conversations we're having now, are more related to ideas and, future business ventures and things like that. So I think that's probably the dynamic that has changed the most, is just the conversations, and maybe less talking about, the weather, or did you see that new car that just came out, which some of those conversations still happen. But I think just in general, we're just focused more on the big ideas and the impact and the purpose and what we're trying to do.
And I'm sure they're so proud. All of them are so proud of you guys. Yeah. And so that's good, because I know it can be sometimes awkward when one family member becomes maybe more successful than another. But I got to spend a lot of time with your family this weekend. You can just see how proud of you that they are. And I also think that it helps that you're very generous. When people are generous, I think then they're happy for your success. Yeah. But when you're like, just, I don't know, not sharing the beautiful gifts that God has given you with others, it's hard to be happy for people being successful. But
well, we learned, actually, our pastor told us that when you live with an open hand, money can come in and money can go out. But when you live with a closed fist, there's no money coming in and no money going out. So Ben and I have made a point to live with an open hand. We want to be abundant thinkers. We want to be abundant givers, and money will come to us. Money will flow out. Ultimately, it's not ours. We're stewards of what's been given to us. I truly believe that. So
I do too.
I
always check too. It's a good thing to check my pulse on anything that I own, anything that I say yes to, participate in, volunteer at, or work and say, yes, I'll do this, job or whatever it might be. I always like to have that open hand approach, because I want to make sure it's what God has for me to do right now, and to always evaluate is this I'm wanting this, or is he wanting this, so that's a really great analogy. I love that analogy you shared. Yeah. So tell me, kind of in this season of your life, what you're most excited about. What are you doing now?
Well, I am super excited because literally yesterday I just announced that I'm going to partner up with a good friend of mine and host a women's community. So I've had a question before from many men, and it was, hey, how do I get my wife on board? Or sometimes it was other women, hey, I would love to spend more time with you. How can I get mentorship? And I never really got into the mentorship world. My husband is a mentor, but I've never gotten into that just because I always like numbers. I'm just more introverted than he is. Ben, yes. He's loud. And
you guys, if you don't We're going to put all of your Instagram and stuff on here for people to follow you. But we should also add, what is Ben's if they want to reach Ben?
Ben Humble _
Ben Humble _ He's an amazing musician and mentor and all the things too. But we're going to tell everybody your contact information at the end here so they know how to get in touch with you. But continue. So you're going to start a women's community.
So I'm going to start a women's community. Actually, it's been around for about a year and my partner was running it, but she from the beginning wanted another partner. And we got to know each other from the Wellspring, actually.
Which is our mastermind. Yeah.
Yeah, you know Kara.
I do.
She's just, oh my goodness, I just love her. She's an amazing human being. And
she's incredible.
Yeah, I've gotten to know her over the last year. We were in a pod together and she really felt called to ask me to partner up with her. And again, I had never thought about doing a community, but God was just kind of like, yeah, you should do it. I'm like, okay, God, but how? And what are we going to do? And what are we going to offer? And he just kind of revealed everything to us. And it's just amazing to see how this beautiful relationship between Kara and I is now official.
Yes.
And we just announced we're opening up enrollment next month. So the community is called Rain & Co. And it's for accredited women who want to grow their wealth and grow their legacy. So we focus on everything from just learning basic finances to understanding how to multiply your money. We talked a little bit about risk tolerance and the different asset types. So we're going to focus a lot of that on that specifically, so that women, when they are, pitched 3 deals, they can understand, number one, what questions should they ask to the person that's pitching them, and then be able to make a wise investment decision. Okay, this one's too risky. This one doesn't fit my criteria. Just be able to discern instead of going with your gut. Actually have data points or questions that you can ask that'll kind of guide you towards, is this the right investment or not? So we're really excited about that. We're going to focus on wealth, of course, but also wellness, wisdom, and just being wild, going back to our childlike freedom and just being our
the 4 W's.
4 W's, yeah. So those are our 4 pillars.
Say that again. Say the 4 W's again.
Wealth, wellness, wisdom, and wild.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's you guys in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Okay. So I heard you say accredited women. So
Yes.
for those people listening, what is that? Who is that person?
So that is, I think, an IRS term. It means you make $200,000 a year if you're filing single, or $300,000 if you're filing with your spouse, or you have $1 million net worth outside of your personal residence.
Okay. So that's really someone who's saying, okay, this is where I live and my current status today is at this level of income. So I actually can be taught kind of the next steps in investing.
Yeah. So it's very important to say that it's somebody who knows how to make money, whether they have a business, if they're an employee, they know how to make money. And I don't want to bring women who are trying to learn how to make money, because that's not what we're going to focus on. It's women who know how to make it, but want to understand how to invest it. And the reason why this is so important to me is I haven't seen a lot of women in these types of conversations, especially in my corporate career. I was often the only woman at the table. I was surrounded by, men. My director, my coworker were both men. Our banking partners, when they came in, were men. Luckily, our CFO was a woman. So if she was in the meeting, I would be the second woman in the meeting. But if she wasn't there, I would be the only woman who had a seat at the table. So specifically, I want to empower women to have a seat at the table and ask the questions that they're like, okay, this is a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it. Like, please ask. There's no dumb question. The only way that you learn is by asking that question. And sometimes it can be intimidating if you're in a room full of men and, they look at you like, why did you just ask that question? Like, that's so stupid. I'm overgeneralizing here, but we want to just create a safe space where women can bring those questions and can understand investing and not feel intimidated by whoever else is in the room.
I love that. I mean, I think there's going to be so many people wanting more information. Where can they find that?
So we are at rainand.co. That's our website.
Okay.
If you follow me, I also have links in my bio. You can just go there.
And it's Rain. Can you spell because there's different Rain.
REIGN. So you're reigning like a queen.
Yes. I love it. Rain & Co.
And anybody that wants to join us, we're actually going to host 4 master classes over the next 4 weeks. They're going to happen on Tuesdays. The first one is on September the 19th at 6 p.m. Central. And you can kind of get a feel for the community. We're just going to introduce ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the economy. We're going to talk a little bit about investment assets. We're going to touch on, I believe, wellness, one of our pillars. And we really just want to show what the women show what the community is for the women who are going to join us.
I love that. Well, that's exciting. That's a big announcement. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And then I'd love to wrap up with you maybe sharing just in this season as a successful young professional, you are still young. And so I would like to say you've accomplished so much, graduated college in 2 years, right out of high school, learned multiple languages, overcame extreme obstacles. How today do you kind of stay mentally, physically, spiritually healthy? What are some habits? Just some very practical, a day in the life of Andreea. How do you stay on your A game on a regular basis?
I have 2 hacks.
Okay. I love hacks. Okay.
So number 1 is gratitude.
Okay.
And actually my favorite quote is, I'll never forget this. It was a pastor who said it. I think it was a Thanksgiving service. And it's, the height of your joy is measured by the depth of your gratitude. So when you think about it, is you can't be upset if you're grateful. If you're grateful, you can't complain because you're just grateful for what you have. So gratitude, number 1, no matter what's going on, even when we do have harder seasons in our life, God, thank you that I'm going through this because I am going to learn something powerful, right? So just gratitude every single day, no matter the circumstances. And even when it's a high, like this week, we had such a high on our anniversary and vow renewal, and it was just the most magical day. And thank you so much for the contribution that you had and something new had to my anniversary. It was so special. Yeah. So gratitude on good days, gratitude on bad days. And then number 2, for your Christian audience, God. For me, God is number 1. Everything I have is from him. And if I lose everything, well, it was from him. It was not mine to begin with. And I've always just thanked him for all the opportunities that have come my way. Just like Job in the Bible, he lost everything and then God restored everything back. So I spend time in the Bible every single morning. This is something new that I started doing this year because for a long time I said I'm nurturing my relationship with my husband, with my family, with friends, but I'm not nurturing my relationship with God every single day. I want to spend time in the Word every single morning before I get my day started. So I make my coffee. My phone is on Do Not Disturb. I'm not checking text. I'm not checking emails. Nothing, like I don't care who. Nothing is urgent enough for me to take time away from my morning quiet time with God. So I call it Jesus and Coffee, and I just read a couple chapters a day. I'm actually trying to get through the entire Bible this year, and yeah, that's my morning hack. And then after that, I can actually get my day started. And I just feel at peace. When I start my day that way, I just feel at peace. What happened before I started this new habit was I would start and I would look at my email and I would immediately have anxiety. And I just recognized that that's not the way that I want to start my day.
I love it. And then you're obviously very fit. So how often do you work out? I want to know.
Okay. So I started a new coaching program. It's not new now. I guess it's a year now. But I started working out 4 times a week, lifting weights. And for every woman out there who's like, if I lift weights, I'm going to get bulky. I mean, you're going to just look good. You're not going to get bulky.
I know. Cause you look good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So 4 times a week. And then I do get my daily steps, and actually that's good physically, but I think just emotionally, there's something really beautiful about fresh air. I don't know all the science behind it, but it does something to my brain. It just puts me in a better mood. So I like to get my outdoor walks, especially being in Phoenix. The weather is pretty nice, maybe with the exception of July and August.
Yeah.
But for the most part,
months, yeah.
For the most part, I try to get my outdoor walk every single day. So really it's just 4 times a week. I think the bigger part is just what you're eating and just being mindful of getting your protein in, and it's all numbers. Going back to my passion, it's all numbers. Calories in, calories out.
I have to tell a funny story. So I hope I don't embarrass you, but the very first time I ever met, like, remember us interacting, you're like, we were at this event together and you're like, I can't eat anything here.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, she's like hardcore. You know what I mean? Like she's like she can't figure out it was like a very limited option too.
Yeah, I think it's like burgers and fries or something. And I was like, I need protein and I need lean.
And you needed greens and stuff like that. And I was just dying because we were at this event and we're at this like literally 5 Diamond resort. And here you are like Grubhubbing like the actual food that you can eat. And then another memory I have with you that I just want our listeners to laugh about is that also at a different resort that we were at for another event, you like take out of your purse the scale.
Yes.
And I'm not even joking. Andreea brings this little scale with her, and it's a food weight measuring scale. And so what she does is prior to eating, she takes the food, and I'm so impressed by this. This is literally, like I said, I don't want to embarrass you because I'm more inspired by the accuracy that you have, such a laser focus to be determined in your health goals. But she will measure her food on the scale and then, decide what she eats and then puts her scale away. And I'm like, wow, like I do that at home sometimes when I'm like really on a plan, but I've never brought it out. And I'm like, wow, Andreea. So like the type of person you are is just so fierce. Like when I think of you, I just think of, first of all, love and kind and fun. We laugh so much together, but I also think of somebody that really says, if this is my goal, nothing's getting in the way with it. It's like fierce. And so I can only imagine how much you're going to bless and help so many women around the world and help them to get more fierce instead of just being like, hey, whatever happens to me, what happens. Yeah. I hate that type of approach to life because to me, it's kind of letting other people choose your outcomes, but instead you're saying, no, I want to choose my outcome and what my life turns out like. So I love your tenacity, and I can't wait to see how your new community or your new venture helps so many women. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you. I think it's important that you don't compromise on your goals. So yeah, I am very precise, and I'm like, I'm going to get that scale. I don't care if it makes it, people are looking at me funny. I don't care. I'm just going to, I have to go after my goal, and I can't compromise on that.
Oh yeah. I'm with you. I've lost the, I don't know how to explain it. When you're younger, I think young women, we worry a lot about what will people think or whatever. And it's kind of like, well, what have I got to lose? They probably didn't even think I was great before. So, who cares? I'll whip out my scale at a restaurant.
Yeah. You live your life. Like, nobody else is living it for you.
Nobody else is. And, what I love is that we're both seeing results based on our risk and stepping out and saying we have a goal and we're going to go after it. So thank you for being an inspiration to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. Well, let's talk about your healthy drink of choice on the show. So every time on the show, we have our special guests tell me about a drink that I've never had. That's your favorite drink. So let's take it out. Yep. What are we drinking today, Andreea?
So today we have a strawberry whey protein shake.
Okay. And so tell me why you like strawberry.
Well, I just like the taste of it. I like berries in general. I do like the vanilla one too, but strawberry is my favorite. They have a chocolate one. I'm not a fan of the chocolate. It's maybe a little too sweet, but this
do you know how many grams of protein are in
42 grams, 230 calories.
I love it. I knew you would know the number on that one. Okay. So we're going to say cheers.
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 What do you think?
Strawberry milk.
Right? It just tastes just like strawberry milk. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I might have to try this on my busy days when I need to get some protein.
Yeah.
Because I'll oftentimes look up and be like, oh, it's been 4 hours and I haven't gotten a hit of protein yet. So, well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I'm going to ask our listeners, if you enjoyed today's topic, please follow Andreea on Instagram, which your handle is?
Andreea, that's with 2 E's, Andreea. Muresan. That's my last name. And I know you're going to tag it so people don't have to write it down.
Yeah, it's totally great. So if you enjoyed it, please follow along and check her out. And we'll also be giving you that free downloadable resource that she so kindly offered to us. And please like this episode, leave us some comments, and share with your friends. We would love to have you keep joining us at the Something New Show. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow The Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.